Okay, so what we'd like to do now is bring a couple of the team members up from Crimson. We're now going to have a look at how Microsoft is actually embedding AI into its products, and I believe we've got some very special previews. Jordan and Mark, if you'd like to come up and get yourself settled. These are previews, I believe, is that correct? Public previews. So it's all about digital feedback loops, I think, Mark. Okay. Right, I'll hand it over to you guys.
Thanks, Mark.
Playing with technology.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so thanks, Mark. So yeah, this afternoon, myself and Mark belong to the Crimson Solutions arm, which is Microsoft Gold Partner certified. Over the next sort of 30 minutes, what we want to talk to you about fundamentally is how are Microsoft embedding some of the data and AI principles that we've talked to about today. So practically, how is it working in their business applications that some of you might be using today or might be thinking about using. Mark's done a brilliant job for Crimson from the solutions perspective of showing you over the last couple of years. Some of you said that you've been to the conference over the last 2 years. So I had to prize Mark to support me doing this third one, and I said, Mark, I need you to do it. Mark's initial reaction was, what, for a third year running? And I said, the good news is you get to go to Amsterdam for a few days. So, yeah, fair to say that sort of softened the blow a little bit. Because Microsoft, they run very regularly now events which showcase some of the latest and greatest functionality that they're embedding into their products. Because it was in Amsterdam, I said to Mark, what did you learn? He said, loads of stuff, Jordan. There was absolutely loads of fantastic themes of how Microsoft were embedding AI and data into Dynamics. But because it was held in Amsterdam, he could only remember 2 of them.
I knew a joke was coming now.
Yeah. So the first topic that we want to talk about with regards to Dynamics 365 and how data and AI is, Microsoft are embedding that into the application is how it's actually now becoming much more easier to join the dots of data that we have, disparate data silos in our businesses. And the second area is actually how data and AI is enabling the end user, putting itself in the boots of the end users who are using these applications in order for them to change a mind shift of being reactive end users to proactive. So just to give some context, because I think Dynamics 365, Dynamics CRM, Dynamics ERP means different things to different people. So just to kind of flesh that out and what we're talking about here in the application that we're going to be showing today. So traditionally, Crimson works predominantly in the customer engagement space of Dynamics 365, so the CRM capacity, which some of you will know, most notably is an application that helps businesses drive sales, increase marketing, and improve customer service. Microsoft, fair to say, have invested absolutely millions in the last 12 to 24 months in regards to expanding their offering and have increased the sort of paradigm of what Dynamics 365 stands for by including things like field service, which helps field operatives out in the field installing and implementing anything from some of the customers here today implementing test the charge points, right the way through to things like talent, which is helping organisations onboard the right level of skill sets, which we've talked around today. So specifically, it should give you a better idea of the stuff that we're talking around with Dynamics 365 and what, in respects to AI, are Microsoft actually embedding in these business applications that we're using. So the themes that we're going to sort of dwell upon and talk about are specifically aspects like machine learning. So how is machine learning embedded within these applications? Virtual assistants, and also things like text recognition and the system picking up on that text recognition to then provide insights to end users. So the first actual solution within the Dynamics 365 sort of plethora of applications that we're going to show is something that's in preview, something that was fair to say launched at Amsterdam, which is Dynamics 365 Customer Insights. So just a show of hands, because I get this a lot when I'm sort of on the front line talking to a number of our customers, how many of you have had business directors or CEOs talk to you about, right, we need to increase revenue, we need to improve customer experience, but in order to do that, we need to create a single version of the truth or a single view of the customer. Have any of you sort of been involved in any projects like that? Show of hands? Yeah, okay. So this isn't a concept that's brand spanking new. I think it's fair to say businesses have strived to deliver a single view of the customer or to create that single version of the truth. And I think certainly when I talk to some of the CEO level characters and business directors, the paradigm and nirvana of the situation looks like to the right. For us as IT leaders and CIOs, I think the reality is a harsh kind of spaghetti junction and more of the akin to the left-hand side. So creating a single view is difficult. Why is it difficult? Because we have a mixture sort of in our IT estates of different applications. We have different technologies, different skill sets required, and actually complexities in joining all these dots. This isn't just about creating a single customer view of all the data that you have internally, but what about now with all the social and aesthetic data that sits out there, behavioural data and insights? To join those together and bring that in with the data that we have control of really is what we're talking about in creating a single view of the customer. So customer insights then. What have Microsoft tried to do? So I think I've just mentioned there the fact that this isn't a theme or something that's brand spanking new, that we haven't talked about or tried to deliver as IT leaders and CIOs across. But I think we talked about the idea of the fact that it's expensive, a number of different skill sets are required. Perhaps it requires developer level skill sets, and even to the point of data scientist skill sets. But what if a business analyst, or what if Microsoft could provide you with the tools where business analysts and functional consultants who, with some configuration training, could actually achieve some of those data insights and that single customer view paradigm that we're talking around? And that's where Microsoft's thought process is coming with customer insights. So what I want Mark to sort of give you a very quick preview of is some actual the functionality working in practice. So thanks, Mark, over to you.
Thanks, Jordan. So, excuse me, demonstration of preview software in front of an audience of 200 people. What could possibly go wrong? So, just to cover off a little bit about, to echo what Jordan said, this is a tool that Microsoft have given us, which is enabling us to achieve something that previously we would have had to have got a consultant in to do. Now, and there are a few people in the audience today that I've actually done this for. So I've come along and I've done a 10-day piece of work where I've gathered your data, pulled it together and given you tools to visualize that data. This is a tool that should enable you and your business analysts to do it themselves. So it's a tool that gathers data from many different disparate data sources. We've got connectors into very many things, which we'll have a look at. We ingest the data, we map it, we enrich it, and then we cornflake it, or conflate it. We had to Google what conflate meant. It merges the data sets together. And then it pushes that data into AI, into analytics. Because, of course, AI and machine learning only works well if we feed it with lots of data. We've heard that a few times today. So, let's go into the demo. This is the front end of the Microsoft Customer Insights. So we start off by feeding it data. So if we go to the data sources here, we can see actually that I've already fed it with 3 sets of data. I perhaps should just quickly log out of Teams because that's going to get irritating. We fed it with 3 sets of data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go off and consume some more data. Point of sale data. Okay. And what we'll see is a screen that shows us all of the out-of-the-box connectors that are available. So we've got the standard ones. We've got the Access and Excel that allows you to feed into, get data from all of those legacy applications, legacy tools that people use throughout the business, CSV, etc. SQL Server, both on-premise and cloud-based SQL data, but of course also Google data, Amazon data, many, many different data sources, as you can see. For the purposes of this demo, I'm going to consume some CSV. So I'll say CSV. This is what the data looks like. Okay, just a great big long list of point of sale data, point of sale purchases data. So I'll take the URL for that CSV file, and it'll pull it in, And what it'll allow me to do, what it'll allow the business analyst to do, is do some clever stuff with it that previously would have taken a consultant to, and with some SQL skills to do. So, first off, we can see that the column headings in this CSV file are just generic headings. But I can see by looking at the data that the column headings are actually in the first row. So guess what? That's quite a common thing. So Microsoft have promoted that feature right up to the top and put it into a menu. So now, just with a couple of mouse clicks, I've got my column headings sorted out. This total price here in the point of sales data has come through from a CSV file. So of course, because it's CSV, it's text. Because it's text, you can't do anything with it. You can't add it up, you can't sum it, you can't average it. So one of the things that I can do, again, with a couple of mouse clicks, I can tell it, well, actually, this is currency. Okay? Dates, again, just a piece of text. So if it's a piece of text, I can't do much with it. But if I tell it that it's a date, then all of a sudden I can now start showing my data summed by year, summed by quarter, by month. So I'll create that. And what that's now doing is it's validating that my query is correct, and it's pulling it into this central pot of customer data. So whilst it's doing that, it's going to take a few minutes to pull that data in. Let's go and have a look at some of the other things that we then do with data. So once we've pulled in data, we can then map it. So this is where it really starts to get clever. So this first data set that you see up here, contacts, so these are all my customers. Yes, okay, it's customers. And I can say that the contact ID is the primary key by putting a dot in there. But it's also done some other quite clever stuff. I hope you can see that. Here, it can see that I've got a column name called first name, last name. I've got date of birth. I've got postcode. And over in the right-hand side, it's done some clever stuff. Just by looking at the kind of things that people call their data, it knows that first name is probably a person, okay? Full name is probably a person. Date of birth is almost certainly a date, okay? And then interestingly down here with the postcode, it says postcode is probably a location. So what that does for us, for the person that's building this data now, is it enables that when the person comes around to the point in the process where they're creating the visualizations on their data, if they drag postcode into their visualization, it knows its location and immediately gives you the opportunity to chart your data into graphs, into maps and so on. So it's contextually aware about the data. So how is it doing that? Well, it's using a thing called the common data model. You'd have seen it on one of Mark's slides at the top of the morning. Underpinning everything that Microsoft are doing now around Office 365 and Dynamics and so on is the common data model. And it knows about things like locations and people and organizations and dates. And so pushing our data into that common data model is expanding out and enriching our data. So once it knows a little bit more about the data, what it then enables me to do is to match the data. So I've got data here from my customer list, okay, this top one here, but also from my loyalty program as well. So I've got another CSV file that I imported relating to my loyalty program. And what I want to do is I want to match those two sets of data. Often a difficult thing to do, but what this tool enables me to do, again, as a business analyst rather than a data scientist type person, it enables me to say, match the contact data to the loyalty data and look for the full name in both, okay? Because I might not have an ID in both. Perhaps the only thing that I've got in both data sets that's common is a full name. But when you match it on a high precision. Rather than an exact precision, match it on a high precision. What that means is that Dave Cotton and David Cotton would be the same person and would match. Then couple that with a match on something like postcode, and hey presto, we've probably got a very strong match of the same person in the two data sets. You then run that process through, and it gives you nearly a 70% match rate. Okay? Then, finally, you merge your data. Again, quite a clever next type of functionality. What this gives me is, this is looking across the two data sets. It's looking across the loyalty program and the contact data set. And it can see that in both data sets, I've got first name, I've got full name, I've got date of birth. So what it's doing is it's saying, okay, well, those are probably exactly the same fields. So in the resultant data set, don't show the first name column twice. Don't show the last name column twice. Just show it once because it's the same thing across both. Then finally, what we're able to do is we're able to actually start using that data and start highlighting some numbers out of it. So what I've done here is I've done a measure based on web purchases and a measure based on number of contacts. Quickly, let's look at the web purchases. What this shows me here is look at the website purchase entity of data that I've pulled in and sum the total price and make it appear as a measure, which means that when I click back onto the home page, those numbers start to pull through here and highlight on the top page. So £74 million worth of data. Now, here's the cute thing. As try as we might yesterday, we couldn't get this to look as pretty as the demos that we've seen. Okay, preview software. So what we've got now is a couple of screenshots that show you what you can then do with your data. What you can then do with that data. So you can see it is the same tool. It says Customer Insights up at the top. So those two little tiles that I'd put on the top, we should be able to do stuff like this. It's just me and Jordan couldn't. Okay? But it'll be fine when it gets released, of course it will. And then you can also start using that data in the other tools that we use, like Dynamics, for example. So this is Dynamics, what we used to call CRM. And so that data that we've amalgamated together through that Customer Insights tool can start to be used through Dynamics.
Yeah, and I think the key thing with this, guys, is that because we're bringing all these disparate data sources, you can see that a lot of business users or sort of directors that we talk to day to day around creating that single customer view, right in this timeline here, regardless of whether it's a website interaction, regardless of whether it's social media, regardless of whether it's someone going on the mobile app, or actually external data, which we'll talk about in a second, which is actually who knows whom, and that's coming through feeds like LinkedIn. We're able to encapsulate data which is from disparate sources and from sources that we don't really have much control of, to bring it into one place to actually then action it. Because it's, I think some of you will have had or been through projects where we've actually got to this certain point down the line, but what Dynamics 365, which is really powerful, then allows you to do is a platform is take this data and actually run it through its marketing engine to proactively engage and market to these customers as a result of understanding some of these data points. So these are just, so that's just an example of showing, again, how it works in terms of different user interfaces for people that are interacting with the Customer Insights app. So hopefully that just gives you a little bit of context. Again, so much that we could show you on that Customer Insights application. The message there is about the fact that, again, whilst this isn't necessarily a new concept, the ability or the sort of empowerment that Microsoft are giving business analyst type skill sets to be empowered to deliver that sort of integration and create that single customer view is quite compelling. So this is an interesting, the second point that we wanted to touch upon that Mark looked at in terms of how data and AI is embedded within Dynamics 365 and is helping end users. I think it's fair to say that when I started to look at AI and when Microsoft started to say, oh, we're embedding AI into our applications to help you as end users, I was a little bit sceptical. And the reason for that, with good reason, is that whilst there's been some tools that Microsoft released and I've been using AI, I think people see it as a bit of a new shiny toy, but things like spell checker, because I'm reasonably illiterate, some of my colleagues will tell you that, I'm not very good at spelling at all. Spell checker has been helping me for a number of years, right the way since I've been using a computer. But AI tools that have been practical for a number of years, some of you remember Clippy over here, God love him. I think it was Microsoft's first stab at a remote assistant, and the idea and the principle was fantastic in terms of having someone who can help you with the tools that you're using day to day, but actually in reality it didn't really work, and fair to say Clippy was deprecated pretty quickly. So there was a little bit of skepticism in me going into sort of and learning some of the stuff around how Microsoft were going to put AI into the applications. I think when I think about some of the challenges that we talk to with our customers as well, around what are some of the biggest problems and barriers to embracing business applications like Dynamics 365, if we think about the end users and why a lot of projects, some of you have been involved in some big CRM projects, some big ERP projects, and I think those ones that fail tend to fail for, or tend to have one of the variables that I'm talking about here, which is, has the implementation considered the end user in terms of what's in it for them? And I think fair to say the implementations that we deliver, whilst I'm not going to say necessarily the technology is completely simple, taking the people on that journey and transforming the way that they work, i.e. the people, process and change and adoption side of the program, is one of the biggest things that we take seriously and have to get right. And when I've spoken to, or Crimson have run a number of different sort of what we describe as CRM rescue projects, and when we've sat down and kind of warts and all with the end stakeholders and said what's gone wrong, some of the perceptions of tools like Dynamics 365 and CRM tools in the past have been things and concepts that they brought out of, oh, this is just another tool where management are putting it in so they can track what it is that we're doing and the activity that I'm going on, i.e. a bit like Big Brother. Or alternatively, this tool is seen as a database, as effectively all I'm doing as an end user is putting data into the system, which is driving a management report. So I'm not actually getting any value from it. I'm just satisfying a management summary and report. So you'll be pleased to hear that my scepticism after sort of Clippy, or Mr. Clippy, and after speaking to some of our customers about some of the challenges that they face with Dynamics 365, Microsoft is starting to get it right, and the AI stuff that they are embedding is starting to really add an impact. So Microsoft are adding AI themes across the application, not just for sales, but because it's an area that I feel quite passionately about, I thought I'd speak to you guys specifically about some of the AI stuff that they are putting in to the sales side of the application. So as an individual, these are some of the sorts of things and themes that they are embedding. So as an individual, for me, I have got a personal assistant, but you'll be pleased to know it's a lot more useful than Mr. Clippy. We've got things like call intelligence and sentiment analysis to monitor engagement and interaction that's going on with the customer that is useful insights to me. So let's just talk about that in a little bit more detail. So at a high level, this is an example of how sort of a B2B sales process might look. And I'm sure you guys working in sort of B2B in businesses will argue that some of the terminology is a little bit different, but you get the idea. So some of the key themes that we're talking around of me as an individual who's working with a number of different customers through a buying cycle or a sales cycle. What is Dynamics 365 doing for me as an end user? How is it winning me over? Beforehand, and certainly a number of different salespeople using these applications would just feel this is a mechanical process where I'm putting in data to satisfy that management report. However, what Microsoft are doing now with that embedded integration, data themes and AI, I'm being told things such as, through the integration with LinkedIn, who potentially should I be getting introduced to in that organisation? I'm able to match the organisation rather than jumping between two disparate data pots, which is my CRM system and LinkedIn. It's suggesting to me who potentially I should get introduced to give me the best possible chance to win this deal. It's also recognising when I'm putting in phone calls and tracking activity against this particular customer or opportunity, it's proactively asking me to enrich my data. I've mentioned the fact, or you can see here, a bit of blurry, but you can see here that it's asking to about a contact specifically that's referenced in a phone call, rather than just leave that there. Even though it's free text data, the AI within the system is picking up and telling me, do you want to create this as a contact and add them to the stakeholders of this bid? So let's just drill into some of my favourite themes in a little bit more detail. Predictive lead and opportunity scoring, not a concept that's new. Lead scoring's been around in marketing applications for a number of years now. The problem that I think some of the problem with that is that tends to stay siloed within marketing. So lead forensics are probably tools like lead forensics are things that you guys will be familiar with, and email marketing tools like MailChimp provide this sort of insight. The issue that has for salespeople like me is that there's a disconnect. So what's really important for me and what's insightful for me is, who do I know, based on all that web interaction and social interaction that an individual or lead is having, I want to know whether that attributes to them being a hot lead or a cold lead or a warm lead. In addition to that, as I've said here and I've referenced, what I want the system to do is support me, is help me create them and enrich the data, and actually suggest to me proactively if I've taken a phone call, I've got Dynamics 365 integrated into my telephony system, and it's recorded the phone call and transcribed the information. I want the solution to suggest to me that should I be creating contacts and enriching my data. And I just touched upon this a second ago, but as salespeople, and as no different to any other business users, we hop between different systems. And one of the systems that I use, or that B2B salespeople will use day to day, is LinkedIn. So following Microsoft making the investment, we're really kind of reaping the rewards now of that opportunity that they saw and that they took hold of. So right the way through in a sales process and an opportunity screen, I've got pretty much all the information to me, to hand in the same system without having to flip in between systems. The ability to understand who the individuals that I engage with as from a salesperson in LinkedIn, the ability to add those people directly from LinkedIn into my CRM system and track the engagements that we might have had in Sales Navigator. So Mark's going to show you some of the themes. That gives you an idea of some of how I feel about some of the AI and embedded data tools within, from a business user perspective. Mark wants to show you some of the preview stuff, which shows you around a management and director perspective as well from a sales angle.
So this is another public preview product from Microsoft. So public preview, I really should turn Teams off, because if you can read that, you're probably going to know what's going on in the office. Another public preview product. So public preview, you guys can go and subscribe to this and start playing with it. This and the customer insights that you saw a moment ago. Sales Insights analyzes my data and starts to draw pictures on it. So data from various places. So, sorry, forgive me, because that's going to get on my nerves as much as everybody else's. Data from various different places. So what I've landed on the home page here, and there's some highlighted stats across the top. Okay, so it knows where we are, and it knows the actual revenue and so on. So that's looking across all of my data and summarising me some top-level, interesting numbers. I'm also able to ask it some questions. So up in this top bit here, there's a natural language search. So I can start typing. Show, and it's not going to do it. There's no way I was going to get through a demo with the whole thing working, was there? Okay, so natural language piece where it's not going to do it. I wonder if I've got an internet connection. Yes, I have. Okay, well, we'll skip over that bit. The idea being there is that I ask it a natural language question like, for example, show me my sales funnel. It goes off and it has a think about what it thinks I mean by show me my sales funnel, and presents me with the answer in graphical form. The reason why I particularly wanted to show that, and it's a shame it's not working, I'll try and get it working during lunch if anybody wants to see it.
Click the message box, that'll give you, normally give you.
Do what, sorry?
Message, that's the one.
That.
Does that give you normally?
The reason why I particularly wanted to show you it is because it shows me the answer. It shows me what it thinks I mean by show me my sales funnel. And then it grades the answer with a highlighted number of dots, 1 through to 5, about how likely it is that that answer that it's given me answers my question. And then what I'm able to do as the user of this solution is I'm able to say, yes, this is the chart that I would expect to see when I ask that question. So I can say yes. And that's machine learning for real in action, because what that's doing is that's learning that I think that that is the correct answer. And so as more and more people throughout our business use that tool, ask natural language questions of it, and get the correct answers back, it can build its confidence about the answers that it's giving me. If I look here at some other data, okay, so this little graphic here, it's nice. It shows me that Molly Clark is quite close to her quota, and that Johnny isn't. But again, a nice little highlight piece of text just here. All reps will meet target. Okay, so as a CEO, CIO, looking at this data, all reps will meet target. It's a comforting thing to see. Okay. What I'm able to then do, though, of course, is click on this button to have a drill down and see what numbers go to make up that high-level picture. Okay, I'm guessing I've got internet problems. Okay, so this nice white space here that you see on your right is that's drilled down into the data. So I guess I'm going to skip past that as well. So this dashboard, yes, okay, it's giving me sales analysis data. It shows me how people are performing against their quota. But also, it's pulling in data from different places as well. So down here, as I scroll down, I can see I've got data that is probably coming in from Exchange, I imagine, because it's looked at my calendar and it knows that I've got meetings with people. It's got news coming in, so there's some news feeds across over on the right-hand side, which is news pertinent to some keywords that I'm analysing. So, if we then looks like I'm just about to fall. Oh, no, okay, right. So I couldn't get the business tab to work for whatever reason there, and admittedly we did get that once or twice yesterday.
Try it again at the end.
So
try it again at the end.
Really? You sure? I did say to Jordan yesterday, you can absolutely guarantee that will happen during the demo. I'll move briefly on to call intelligence. Now again, this is something that you guys can do for real with this tool now. If you've got a call logging system that logs conversations, you can introduce that data up into Microsoft Azure, up into the Azure cloud, and you can give it to the cognitive services that are available there, and it can analyze those call recordings and tell you some really interesting stuff about it. So here I can see that I'm 7% up month on month on calls where competition has been mentioned. So it's analysed all the phone logs, and it knows that compared to last month, we're 7% up where our competition is mentioned, based on some keywords again. I find this interesting as well. We can see here that 58% of our calls have a positive sentiment around them. And then drilling down into that a little bit more closely, we can see that David has largely, actually it's Jeff by the looks of it, that's mostly has positive sentiment in his calls and the least amount of negativity in his calls. So, looking at David, we can see that David speaks 85 words a minute, which is about what Jordan speaks, I would imagine. Okay, so he speaks real quick. But interestingly, then looking at David, he spends 32% of the time talking and 68% of the time listening, which is completely at odds with everybody else. And it's probably because David gets so many words in a minute that he gets all of his stuff said. So these are high-level reports using cognitive services, Microsoft Azure cognitive services, to analyze our call logs and pull out some interesting data around it. Just quickly, let's go and have a look at David, focusing in particularly on him. Okay, I can see that this conversation here was particularly positive. So if I click onto that conversation there, okay, what it should have done was drill down into this particular conversation that he had here. And so what I can do here, I don't know how, okay, it is quite clear. I can see here that something particularly positive was said just here. And I can see here that's a word has been mentioned. That black line tells me that a word has been mentioned. So I can go and analyse the particular telephone conversation, and I can see at that point there he said extruder. And then just here, he said something positive. But what did he say? Well, we can look at the transcript of the call and probably have a good day, I imagine, was the positive thing that was said. The word probably picked up on the word good. So real deep analysis done just by introducing our call logs up to Azure, and this is what we get out of it. Okay, I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to skip past the next two slides. And
I think the context of those slides, again, is that similar to the principle of point number 1, is that a lot of this AI sort of type of functionality you've seen there, some of the cards that Mark didn't sort of go over in too much detail across the top because of time, were focused around actually supporting and providing real-time word statistics around how that individual could improve performance around their call performance, and some of the facts around how their sentiment is situated. And again, some of the principles of that AI and data type tooling is available to us at a low-code, no-code capacity. So this is just a funny example. Mark said I had to throw this in because it's a real-world example and it makes me look a bit silly. But you'll see that, for those of you that are working with Dynamics 365 and know the integration points with Office 365, Microsoft have worked relentlessly on those integrations to make these applications unified, i.e. if you're using things like Office 365, it's better together. So integration with Outlook allows us to actually directly track even emails that have just come into our inbox, and if the email address from the customer on the customer contact card exists, emails that are coming in will display in the activity timeline regardless of whether anyone's manually tracked them. So I was sat or was about to deliver a demonstration to a customer who'd asked me specifically that they had 2 challenges. It was activity management and sales pipeline management to deliver Dynamics 365 to meet those two problems and pain points. Due to unforeseen circumstances, and like all great salespeople, I was running 6 minutes late to the webinar and conference. So I just wanted to share with you how AI, I think, slightly allowed me to convince the company that I was dealing with that actually I was deliberately late and that I needed to be late in order to show them some of the AI data tools and sentiment.
See, what I've also got, which is really clever, is, so you can see here, Mike, you know, because I was slightly late to the email, the relationship insights, this is AI, Microsoft AI walking. Mike sounds upset because you know you put we're sat in your meeting, but it's awful quiet here. So it's picking up sentiment of the fact that your email doesn't sound like I'm being a great individual or that I'm leaving you hanging on a Skype call, and it's flagging this, which will go to my dashboard.
Is that what you were late, Jordan? Right.
So there you go. Data and AI really genuinely saving salespeople. Now, you'll be pleased to know they did take the workshop after the call, so thank God. So yeah, just to summarise, apologies some of the demonstration stuff wasn't working. Hopefully we'll be running some sort of webinars after the back of this conference where we can show some more of that stuff if you're interested. But 2 key messages were fundamentally that Microsoft are making it easy with the tools that they have to allow you to deliver single views of data using customer insights. And secondly, that actually Microsoft are thinking and putting themselves in the boots of the end users and using AI practically to actually gain adoption into the applications that they're using. So we've barely scratched the surface. As I say, if Mark could remember everything that he learned at Amsterdam, it would be fantastic. But there's some resources in the slides that we'll share out with you after. If you've got any questions after, then we'll see you at lunch. And thank you for your time. Cheers.